Go ahead, Jim.
I was going to speak on much of what Mary just said, and I'm not sure I can follow that. She did a good job. First, I think there's a couple things I would like to just comment on. First, the Republicans won by a majority of vote. They did. I don't call 52 to 48 a mandate.
I don't either.
And the governor has been using that term mandate awfully loosely. And I don't think this silent majority that's being spoke of so strongly all the time, particularly by the governor, is a large silent majority. 52 to 48 is not a large silent majority. I recognize that we have a budget problem in the state. We do have to address the spending problem. We have to address the revenue problem. There are other alternatives than these draconian budget cuts to addressing our needs. We are working on a budget that is based on trying to address a supposed $3 billion deficit in one budget term. And the governor himself says we've taken 30 years to get into this, which we have, under both parties. The mistakes that have been made are too large to be addressed in one biennium. It would be much more reasonable to address that problem over 2 biennial budgets or more. I agree we have to address it, but we don't have to do it in one budget. I do want to speak. I'm a school board member. I have been so for 25 years. I have been on the school's negotiating committee almost that entire time. I have been the lead negotiator for our district for probably 15 years or more. I have never found our union to be a problem at our school district. We have had a very good working relationship with our union. Mayville has a very competitive salary schedule. We are not the top, we are not the bottom. As a result of that, we've been able to hire very good staff. So we've negotiated salary schedules, we've negotiated benefits. I've never found the union to be a problem in meeting our educational needs. We, like Columbus, I believe, Mary, are going to be experiencing the same problem. We are anticipating approximately a $1.2 million deficit, I believe, in our reduction in our budget because of the loss of aides. Only about $900,000 of that will be covered by the our savings in retirement and insurance. So we are going to have to make additional cuts in our programs or in our staff to meet those needs in our budget. We are going to reduce the quality of our educational program at Mayville because of the budget cuts. We will have no choice.
Jim, do you know if Mayville received any stimulus money last budget?
Yes, we did.
And do you know if there's any of that left, or was that used?
No, we used that over a 2-year period to particularly address our reading program and our special needs students. And we set that up in such a way that when that money was used up, that the staff that had moved up into that particular assignment will go back to their previous assignment.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is because it is another line item that in some districts there still is some cash there that is another item that's available to them in this budget cycle. But
right. We were very careful in our planning so that we did not build that into our budget, that when the money was gone, that we would have to make it up from our tax revenues.
Gotcha.
I would suggest, at a meeting that one of the previous speakers mentioned last night, it was suggested that one way to deal with particularly our school funding problem was to take schools off the property tax, which ever since I've been on a school board has been addressed as one of our real problems, and I agree it is. What was suggested is that take the schools off the property tax and raise the sales tax by 1 cent. And use that money then as a more fair taxing way to meet the school financing needs. And by not putting that tax on the necessities such as clothing and food and the things that all of us have to have and would be particularly hurtful to the lower income people. So I would like to know your position on how we could address and how we are going to deal with the cuts in school funding.
Well, again, I'm not, I don't know exactly what Mayville's situation is.
Very similar to what Mary said in Columbus.
Without knowing exactly, again, if there's any costs associated with other areas of the budget and related to collective bargaining, some local officials have been able to put a number on that and say it's workable. Others have said there's nothing associated with that. So it's kind of in the eye of the beholder on that. And I think what we're really doing is we're asking these school boards, these local elected officials that have continued to see their portion of the budget that they control eaten up by salaries and benefits. And some, it's in excess of 80% at this point.
Almost all schools are about 80%.
Yeah, there's not much more for the school board to manage. That's one of the issues that's related to this. So you have to make these very difficult decisions, and yet there's very little revenue at the top for them to do that, and yet each and every year there has been more and more and more revenue available to schools. Whether it was done the way Governor Doyle cut just as much money out of schools as the Republicans did. What Governor Doyle said was, go back to the taxpayers and put it on the property tax bill, which is what happened last time. What we're saying is that doesn't seem to be an alternative for the issues that are facing those in the private sector that can't pay that property tax bill. They cannot continue to watch that property tax bill increase, and yet it continues to happen. I think that's one of the things that we're trying to watch in this biennium, is that is not passed on again to the local level. And like I said, school board members and district administrators, some have embraced it, some have said, listen, this is going to work, we're going to be able to get through this, and others are not. I guess what we'll see in the Finance Committee, before we vote on June 15th, is as these things shake out, as we get a response from local elected officials on this, there may be adjustments in the Finance Committee. So maybe a situation like that could be addressed. A hold harmless. A lot of people are worried about tech colleges, because tech colleges fell into this category where we have some that have been wildly successful going to referendum, like MATC. Just passed a $149 million referendum, and others have not. And yet we know there's a high demand on tech colleges right now because of all the people in the private sector that have lost their jobs. So it's kind of a catch-22 on tech colleges as well. I don't have a specific answer to the situation in Mayville, but I think it is something that certainly as things shake out at the local level, we'll see what some of the local elected officials do with this.
What I do find as unacceptable, and the answer I've heard repeatedly from the governor, is that if the savings due to health care and retirement costs are not adequate, his answer has been to additional cuts to our staff or to their salaries. Teachers are already underpaid. I really take offense by hearing this, particularly from Senator Grothman, this $100,000 teacher.
Yeah.
There are no $100,000 teachers in the state of Wisconsin. Teachers like myself are public employees. Teaching salaries are way below a similar education requirement job. And to say that the answer is to continually reduce their salaries as a way to meet our funding needs for the schools is just totally unacceptable.
Well, the average Wisconsin teacher's compensation with salary and fringe benefits in 09-10 was $74,844. That's from the Department of Public Instruction.
I would accept that.
With
benefits.
Yeah, with benefits. And the reason I bring that up is because that is the portion. That is the portion, I think, that many people in the private sector are uncomfortable with, is that benefit package. Because if that's the average, certainly you have teachers with much more seniority at 30 years or plus, probably a master's degree plus 12 credits, that are up even higher than that. And then you have starting teachers. And that figure, that $75,000 figure, I think, is where most private sector people go, wait a minute, this is out of whack with what's going on the other side. And that's when they become very uncomfortable. What Senator Grothman is referring to is the top end in MPS. Teachers in the Milwaukee public school system make $100,000 with salary and fringe benefits, which is kind of ironic that that's one of the districts that's struggling most throughout the state, and yet they are the ones who continue to end up in contracts that have their salaries and fringes pushed to six figures. So
I might tend to agree that that's a fair salary for them, that anybody who has to teach in that situation probably deserves that money.
Okay.